Hey everyone, and welcome to Christ's Family Church. We are so glad that you've decided to join us virtually, and we hope that you'll be blessed in this teaching.
So I'll never forget the day when I got the news, big news for me, that my long-distance girlfriend of 5 months, who I had already fallen head over heels in love with, and who I had already decided I was going to marry, got hired at the same church that I was working at, and would be moving from this really weird place that I had never heard of. Maybe you've heard of it, like the Quad Cities. Like, she would be moving from there all the way across the country to where I was in New Bern, North Carolina, which, if you're curious, was 16 and a half hours away. So let me just clarify the picture for you, okay? I met this girl online. We've been talking. We've been texting each other. We've been calling each other. We'd FaceTimed each other. And then she got hired at this church, and she said, you know what? I have this opportunity. I love you so much, and I want to be where you are. And so I'm going to hop on a plane. I'm going to come check New Bern out, and then I'm going to hop in a car, and I'm going to move all the way out there so that I can be in the same city as you. And so that was incredible for me. When I gave this message at Quest Camp this year, I told a bunch of teenage guys, I was like, listen, if you ever find a girl that loves Jesus and is willing to move across the country to be with you, you better put a ring on it as fast as you can, okay? That's where my mind was. But I'll never forget that day when I realized that my future wife and the future mother of my children, Beth, she's right over there if you want to look at her this morning, would now only be 10 minutes away from me instead of 16 and a half hours. And specifically, I remember not just where I was and what I was doing when I found this out, but I remember how exuberantly excited and just overwhelmingly excited I got when I realized my girlfriend would be moving to town. Not just because I was a man in love, not just because I was obsessed with this woman and the woman of my dreams was crossing the country to be with me, but because for the first time ever in our relationship, I got to take this girl out on dates. I was just so pumped up about the idea of, oh my gosh, my girlfriend's going to be here. I'm going to get to take her out every single Friday night. I'm going to get my truck cleaned. I'm going to clean myself up, and I'm going to take her out to the best places in New Bern, North Carolina, and we're going to have a great time. I got to take this girl out on dates. I got to spit some game. For those of you who don't know, that's what millennials mean when they mean flirting. I got to flirt. I got to do my thing in person. And I remember once Beth finally got to New Bern, North Carolina, we started going out for date night every Friday night. Every Friday afternoon, I would go through this little ritual, this little process of getting ready for date night. And so I would go home after work, and I would spend a prolonged amount of time getting really, really cleaned up and really, really dressed up in my best outfit ever before I would go and pick Beth up and we'd go out to dinner or wherever we were going out for a date. So every Friday afternoon, I would take an extra long shower for date night where, just like Kevin McAllister said in Home Alone, I'd wash with actual soap, including in between my toes and in my belly button. I would take an extra long amount of time brushing my teeth and then flossing and then rinsing with mouthwash. I would shave and I would line up my beard before putting beard balm in it to make it really soft. And then I would put gel in my hair to make it look really good. And then once all of that was over, I would open up my cabinet and I would grab a bottle of cologne, my best cologne, not the cheap stuff, okay, the real expensive stuff. And I would do this thing where I would douse myself in polo red, like I was trying to put out a fire, okay? I mean, we're talking just over and over and over and over and over and over and on the back of the head, just in the sky, oh. Because I wanted to smell good, and I wanted to look good, and I wanted to feel good for this woman who had crossed the country to be with me. Like, y'all, I'm not kidding. Like you could smell me around the block, okay? It was a little bit ridiculous. I went through this process of working on myself, making myself really clean and really dressed up and looking really good so that I can impress this wonderful woman. And for like 3 months, this went on with the same little ritual of working on myself, how I looked, how I smelled every single Friday afternoon with the showers and the shaving and the too much cologne, all because I wanted to look good and smell good and feel good for and impress this woman that I loved more than any other. Honey, did it work? Did it work? Oh, good. But after about 3 months of dates with Beth and 3 months of just living in the same city as her and 3 months of the two of us getting to know each other and getting comfortable around each other, I'll never forget this beautiful, wonderful woman who had crossed the country to be with me and who I loved so much and who I wanted to look good and smell good and feel good for. I'll never forget, she sat me down one night. It was like after date night. We were sitting there together. We were just hanging out, winding down for the day. And she sat down with me, and she took both of my hands in hers, and she looked me in the eyes, and she told me something, and like I'm expecting like, oh, baby, I love you so much, and like all this romantic stuff. No, like she took me by the hands, she looked me in the eyes, and she told me something that she didn't really want to tell me, but that I needed to know. She took my hands, she looked me in the eyes. She said, honey, you smell really bad. What? Are you kidding? No way. Like what? And I remember I felt crushed. I felt embarrassed. I felt so dumb. Like I had put all this work into making myself look good and smell good to impress her. I mean, I picked out special cologne and everything. Only to find out 3 months later that the whole time I was walking around with my chest puffed out thinking, I look good. I actually reeked. Because see, church, what I didn't realize at the time was that even though I took the extra long shower and even though I used the beard balm and the hair gel and the cologne, even though I did all of this work on myself to look and to smell and to feel good, my shoes stank. I don't know if you have this problem, but I've had it since before I met Beth. My feet sweat a lot. Gross, I know. And no matter what I do to keep my sneakers clean, every single pair of sneakers that I get, they always, just a matter of time, they always end up smelling just gross, okay, disgusting. And they always end up in this place where they stink more than the cologne is covering. Or to say it another way, I ended up in this place with Beth, this woman that I loved, where no matter what I did, and no matter how much I worked on myself, I still ended up stinking. I think we have a slide for that. Yeah, there it is. No matter how much I worked on myself, I still ended up stinking. And church, if I were to guess, I would say that there are probably a lot of us in church this morning, myself included, who when you look at your life and where you are right now, maybe the problem isn't stinky shoes. But you look at your life and you see this weird dichotomy that's a lot like me and my stinky shoes, where on the one hand, you're working on yourself and your life a lot. So you're exercising to the point of obsession over your physical health and your physical appearance, and you're investing in all of the right things, and you've finally got the right house in the right neighborhood on the right street, and and you've got your kids in the best schools, and your schedule is full with no room left with the right sports and the right clubs and the right fundraisers and the meetings and the connections that will get you and your family where you need to be in life. And you're cutting out all of the toxic people or all of the people that you disagree with from your life. Or maybe for you, you're living under the mantra of 2025 postmodernism that tells you to just live your truth because after all, you know what's best for you. Or maybe you're out here just receiving good vibes, as the kids say, or receiving positive energy from the universe. Or maybe you're coming to church. All in this attempt to improve, to succeed, to be better, to get farther, to smell better, to look better, to feel better here on planet Earth. Whatever it is, on the one hand, we're all to some degree working on ourselves and our lives a lot. Only to discover that, on the other hand, there's just something about our lives that stinks, no matter what we do to it. Like, yeah, you can squat 250, but you can't sleep at night. Yeah, you don't talk to that toxic person anymore, but you're still angry all the time. Sure, you're receiving all the good vibes and positive energy that you can, and you're investing in all the right things, and you've got all the right connections for you and your children and grandchildren. But when you close your eyes at night, the anxiety and the depression, they just won't go away. Like some way, somehow, the investment that you're making or that you've made in yourself and your quality of life, it isn't just taking your money, it's not just taking your time, it's not just taking your resources, but it's also, for some reason, stealing your peace, even though it promised to give you peace. To repeat what I said before, no matter how much you're working on yourself, we've got a slide there, no matter how much you're working on yourself, something still stinks. And to say it another way, the cologne just isn't masking the shoes. If that's you this morning, when you look at your life, and if you'll allow me, I'd like to throw out another guess, another educated guess as to what the problem might be or what the stinky shoe actually is in our lives as we struggle through this very human dichotomy that is normal for every sinful person to struggle with, even Christians who are waiting for Christ to return and working to bring his kingdom to earth, but remains a problem that Jesus, by his Spirit, longs to redeem and to sanctify within us as we follow him. An educated guess. And it's this: if you're the person who, no matter how much cologne you pour on your life, something still smells stinky, the problem might not actually be that you're not working on yourself in your life hard enough. Let me say that again. The problem might not be that you're not working on yourself in your life hard enough, but it might be something entirely different that has to do with what Jesus says here in Matthew 7, verses 13 through 14. Jesus, he's speaking at the end of the Sermon on the Mount, and he says this. He says, "Enter by the narrow gate. For the gate is wide and the way is easy that leads to destruction, and those who enter by it are many. For the gate is narrow and the way is hard that leads to life, and those who find it are few." The problem that's stinking up your life might not be that you're not working hard enough on yourself and your life. Instead, the problem might be that all of the work that you're doing or all of the work that we're doing on ourselves, on our lives, and how usually all of it focuses on things that are on the outside rather than what's on the inside of our lives, and our obsession with it in order to appear good to ourselves and the rest of the world around us, all of the work that we're doing might be a part of a road or a way of life that Jesus says is wide and broad, and that ultimately leads to destruction. All of the work that you're doing is part of a road or a way of life that Jesus says is wide and broad and that ultimately leads to destruction. Or, to say it another way, we'll bring it up on the screen. The problem isn't that you need to work harder. The problem might be that you need a different road. Now, don't take my word for it. These words are in red, which means Jesus is talking. Specifically, here in the book of Matthew, he's talking about these roads, this narrow gate, this narrow road, and this broad road that is wide and leads to destruction. He's talking about all of those things at the end of the Sermon on the Mount. And what's interesting is that when you open up to Matthew chapters 5 through 7, you begin reading the Sermon on the Mount, what you're going to find in the Sermon on the Mount is what it means to do what we just read. When you open up in Matthew chapters 5 through 7 and you begin reading the Sermon on the Mount, what you're going to find is what it means to enter through the narrow gate or to live in a way that leads to life. But not only that, you're also going to find what it means to not do that and to walk down the broad road or to live in a way that leads to destruction. If you spend any amount of time reading the Sermon on the Mount, you're going to find a definition of the narrow road and you're going to find a definition of the broad road. And then at the end of the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus concludes all of it by saying, listen, I've laid it out to you. Here's the narrow road, here's the broad road. Now, enter by the narrow road. And so that's what we're going to look at for just a few moments. We're going to spend the rest of our time this morning defining what the narrow road is. And we're going to define what the broad road is in the Sermon on the Mount. So, when we open up into the sermon, Matthew chapters 5 through 7, what we see pretty clearly is that, for the most part, there are three things in the sermon that tell us what it means to live on the narrow road and what it means to live on the broad road. So let's start with the narrow. Three things that tell us what it means to live on the narrow road. You open up into Matthew chapter 5, verses 21 through 48, and you begin hearing Jesus say things like this. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn the other to him also. And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2. And love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. And you begin to see that right off the bat, the narrow road, the first thing about it is that it's all about you being greater than me. You being greater than me, or going out of the way to think of others before we think of ourselves, instead of making everything about ourselves and how we look or what we think or how we feel or getting our revenge. Okay? So that's the first thing. You being greater than me. We keep going. Matthew chapter 6, verses 1 through 34, a little bit further into this sermon, and you start hearing Jesus say things like this. Be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of people to be seen by them. And don't collect for yourselves treasures on earth. And don't worry about your life or what you will eat or what you will drink or about your body, what you will wear. Isn't life more than food and the body more than clothing? And you cannot be slaves of God and money. Round all that out, and we begin to see that the narrow road, it's not just about you being greater than me, but the narrow road, it's also about escaping the status trap. It's about blowing up our obsession with more and better, where everything we do is done in order to look better and appear more put together and to be more successful and to be seen and applauded more by the world, and where we are slaves to things like status and wealth and people's opinions. And instead, it's about living a life where the only one that we care about seeing us, and the only one we care about serving, and the only one whose opinion matters to us is God's. So the narrow road, it's you being greater than me, and it's about escaping the status trap. And then lastly, we open up a little bit further into Matthew chapter 7, verses 1 through 12. And you start hearing Jesus say things like this. Why do you look at the speck in your brother's eye, but you don't notice the log in your own eye? Or to say it differently, why do you spend all of your time looking at what's wrong with everyone else while never looking at what's wrong with you? And then Jesus says, keep asking and it will be given to you. Keep searching and you will find. Keep knocking and the door will be opened to you. And we begin to see that this narrow road that Jesus talks about, it's not just about you being greater than me. It's not just about escaping the status trap, but it's also about seeking God over seeing specks. It's not about spending all of your time thinking about what's wrong with people and the world. It's not about how much better you think that you are than others or what you're going to do and accomplish in order to be better than others. It's not about pridefully assuming that you know what's best for yourself and the world around you, but it's about asking God to work in your life first before you speak truth and justice into others. And it's about asking and searching for God's truth over your truth. This narrow road, it's got three things that characterize it. You being greater than me. Escaping the status trap. And seeking God over seeing specks. On the flip side, though, because remember, the Sermon on the Mount, it doesn't just teach us what the narrow road is, it also teaches us what the broad road is. So on the flip side, we look at the Sermon on the Mount, and we begin to talk about this broad road that has a wide gate and that many go through. And we see, as you'll see on this chart, that it's just the exact opposite. The exact opposite of the narrow road. So if the narrow road is about you being greater than me and not being angry with others and loving even those who hurt you and reconciling or restoring the relationship with people who have hurt you, then the broad road is about me being greater than you. And not doing any of that, but where you're angry with others all the time and where you cut off everyone that you decide is toxic and where you don't give a second thought to others because after all, you're working on yourself. And where you're always ready to hit back. If the narrow road is about escaping the status trap and blowing up this obsession with more and better and what everyone else thinks to the point that you truly don't care about the opinions of the world, but you only care about the opinions of Jesus, then the broad road is the exact opposite. It's about embracing the status trap. Where you've got to hustle harder in order to look and appear better for everyone around you. And where you're nice to everyone, not because you love them, but because you know that there's something in it for you. And where the stuff keeping you up at night, it's not God, but what keeps you up at night is your investment portfolio, or what Sarah meant by that comment on Facebook, or why you lost 2 followers, or whatever it might be that you're obsessed with when it comes to status and being important and being successful. If the narrow road is about seeking God over seeing specks, where you accept that you have problems in your own life that you need God to help you with, and where you seek His truth over your truth, then the broad road is the exact opposite. It's about seeing all of the specks over seeking God, where you point the finger and you blame everyone else, and where you never seek God's views on things, and where you'll just live your own truth because your truth doesn't have to do anything that you don't want to do, and it certainly doesn't need God. The broad road is exactly the opposite of the narrow. But ironically, I don't know if you can fully see everything up there, but ironically, this broad road, it's not just the opposite of the narrow. It also sounds very similar to what we often mean when we say we're working on ourselves. It is dangerously similar to much of the work that we do on ourselves and our lives. Isn't it interesting, church, how similar cutting off toxic people and not giving them a second thought, much less a second chance, sounds to the broad roads, me being greater than you and seeing all of the specks in other people's eyes. Isn't it interesting, church, how similar exercising to the point of obsession over your physical health and appearance and filling your life to the breaking point with this game and that meeting and this fundraiser and that project and investing your life away to the point of obsession all sound to embracing the status trap and living to be seen as successful by others. Isn't it interesting how similar receiving good vibes and doing what you think is best or living your truth at the expense of everyone else in your life and while your Bible sits on a shelf sounds to how the broad road is all about seeing specks, overseeing God or seeking God. We walk down this road of saying, I'm doing the right things. I got to be successful. When really, it's the broad road. Church, the problem for so many of our lives, it's not that we're not working hard enough. The problem for so many of our lives is not that we're not working hard enough. No, the problem for so many of our lives is that we're working hard, and boy, are we ever. We're working hard. But we're working hard on a road that we think is good, one called working on myself or improving my life or setting my kids up for success or doing what's right for me. We are working hard on a road that we think is good, that's actually just the broad road in disguise. And church, hear me. Please hear me. Not as one who is trying to lord this over you, but as one who has been experiencing this personally in my life right now. This thing about the broad road. This thing about me being greater than you and embracing the status trap and seeing specks over seeking God. This thing about working on myself in my life is that this road, it promises good things for you. It sounds good to cut off everyone that you decide is toxic or that you decide doesn't fit or doesn't mesh with you rather than to do the hard work of Christ-centered community and love. It is appealing to decide for yourself what is true and untrue, rather than embrace the hard but actually freeing reality that you don't know everything. It is joyfully addicting to chase after the status symbols of the world rather than to pursue Christ-likeness. It's appealing. It's joyfully addicting. It sounds very good. But what Jesus makes abundantly clear is that if you live the entirety of your life prioritizing all of those things and choosing that road over Him while He's standing there calling out to you, don't do it. Don't give in. Enter by the narrow road. The only place it'll ever lead you, no matter how good it might look, no matter how good it might smell, no matter how appealing it might be, and no matter how good the lives of those who live on it might seem. The only place that'll ever lead you is a place that Jesus called destruction. Greek word, apoleia. Let's bring that up on the screen. Greek word, apoleia, which refers to both destruction as a state of being, meaning it'll destroy your life right now, which is why something still stinks in your life no matter how much cologne you pour on it, or why you can't sleep at night, or why you're still so angry all the time, or why you're still wrecked by anxiety all the time, or why there always seems to be someone who's an enemy in your life. It'll wreck and destroy your life right now. It is a state of being. And it refers to eternal ruin. meaning this broad road that we play around with like it's a toy out of a McDonald's Happy Meal, will eventually destroy your life forever, as it eternally separates you from God, who Scripture, again, not me, Scripture says is the source of every good thing. So many times we're out here and we open up the cabinet of our lives and we just, something still stinks. Let me spray some more. Let me invest more. Let me date this person. Let me get into the right college. Let me take this class. Man, something still stinks. Like my girlfriend, like she can't even be around me anymore. I stink so bad. Let me just keep spraying. Let me just keep spraying. And the whole time Jesus is standing there and he's saying very clearly, change your shoes. So that's the bad news. But the good news is this, church. There is grace and there is mercy and there is forgiveness, even for those who are on the broad road. And there is grace and there is mercy and there is forgiveness in the fact that the gate to the narrow road is still open. And it's open because Jesus, the one who said those words, and who, drops the bad news in our lives, is also the one who at the end of his life died for you and took the punishment deserving of all of us for spending all of our time on the broad road. And then rose from the grave so that you can walk in a newness of life, so that you can put others before yourself, so that you can escape the status trap, and so that you can stop focusing on all of the specks in other people's eyes and you can start seeking God. And my prayer, Pastor Zachary's prayer, and the prayer of our church is that if you have never done that, if you've never given your life to Jesus, but you're still sitting at home and you're wrecked by the anxiety and the depression and you're still just overwhelmed by the stench of your life, you can find Jesus today. And I pray that you would. We're going to close out our service today and all the lights will turn off and we'll lock up all the doors. Everyone will go home, but if you're in a place where you're saying to yourself, you know what? Yeah, something in my life stinks. Something in my life reeks, and I want to fix it. You can come talk to me. You can come talk to Gabby or Beth or any one of the people sitting in this room who know Jesus and love Jesus and want to give their life to Jesus every single day of their lives. And we would love to have a conversation about how you can know him and about how your life can be transformed forever.
Hey again, we hope that you enjoyed that teaching from Christ Family Church. If you'd like to come visit us in person sometime, we meet every single Sunday at 9:30 a.m. And if you'd like to learn more about our church, you can visit us online at christfamilychurch.org. Once again, thanks for watching.